Going to read out a report from the Daily Mail regarding the latest Just Stop Oil actions on the M25. Now, regarding the source, I quote a lot of sources. My last video, I quoted the BBC. I've quoted the newspaper. I've quoted the Times. I've quoted a whole range of things. It doesn't necessarily mean I agree with the overall editorial direction of a paper, but it's good to have different sources, and it's just convenient to read it this way. So this is from the 9th of November, so a few days ago. The report, well, doesn't say, Daily Mail reporter. This really is an eye opener for the damage these eco thugs are causing. So I'm just going to read it out. If you just bear with me, it's not too long. A grieving son furiously criticised selfish climate change activists yesterday after their motorway protests meant he missed his father's funeral. I've just seen actually the interview with him, at least a little segment of it that was posted on Twitter. And you could tell the pain and stress in the guy's voice from his experience. Nurses, commuters, hauliers, and hospital patients hit out at Just Stop Oil protesters who defied a court injunction and climbed on gantries above the M25 yesterday, causing a second day of tailbacks. At least 16 were arrested across Essex, Hertfordshire, Kent, and Surrey on the country's busiest motorway, one of the world's busiest motorways, actually, as the protesters repeated the action they took on Monday. Tony Bambury of Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire, who missed his father's funeral, said he had nothing but contempt for every one of the protesters, but the brazen group warned of more to come despite a High Court injunction designed to bar them from the M25. Just add a little bit of information about Mr. Bambury there. He said that he messaged them on Twitter to share his thoughts. No apology, no recognition of what they'd done, and that's very characteristic of this group. They they're hated by the public, but they actively ignore public feedback. They won't even try to defend themselves. They won't engage with people. They won't engage with the police. They won't engage with the public. Scotland Yard last night said the injunction gave courts extra powers, while the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act was suitable for more egregious breaches. Former Conservative leader Sir Ian Duncan Smith said injunctions were not proving a deterrent and called on police to issue on the spot fines instead. He said the one thing that gets through is if you start fining people £1,000. Um, I've been critical of IDS at times. I was very critical of them as Secretary of State for Work and Pensions back in the day under the Cameron administration. But he is right about this. The injunctions, unfortunately, aren't working. Just Stop Oil themselves say it won't work. In fact, they have threatened on their page. They've said the only thing that will stop them is if the government stops granting you oil and gas licenses. But they'll find another cause. All these groups are interlinked. Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, Annual Rebellion, Insulate Britain. They're all. I mean, the people in Insulate Britain last year on the roads are the same people with Just Stop Oil. Pretty much, some of them are literally the same faces. Um, So just continuing the report, Mr. Bambury, who had tried to get to his father's funeral in Pitsea, Essex on Monday, said in a passionate message to the protesters on BBC Three Counties Radio, "What you have done to me will be staying with me forever. You selfish, selfish people. I have nothing but contempt for every single one of you." A Just Stop Oil spokesperson tried to say he was really sorry, but Mr. Bambury told him, "You can take your apology and shove it where the sun does not shine." But he'd actually messaged them online and they hadn't responded. So I don't know who this person. I mean, I don't blame him for taking that sort of response because sorry is meaningless. It's utterly meaningless when they're going to do this again. So it's crocodile tears. To hell with their apologies. One medic called Lauren. I really feel sorry for this woman, and I've actually found this tweet. Wrote on Twitter, been on a 12-hour night shift in A&E, haven't slept in 16 hours, and now having to wait on the M25 because of Just Stop Oil. Will you also take responsibility if I crash from exhaustion? Some smart arson on her reply feed said, "Oh, well, you've stopped and you're not going to crash." That really isn't the point. Even if the vehicles are stationary, the principle is there because it could be like on and off. It could be. It really doesn't matter. Putting any blame on people affected by this is repulsive, quite frankly. Broadcaster James Whale said he missed a cancer checkup because of the fuckwits on the M25. That's verbatim. Paul Mummery from the Road Haulage Association said disrupting transport will push the price of goods and jobs. Great. So we already have a cost of living crisis. That's potentially going to be affected. Seasoned protester Edred Whitting, 25, was among those bringing misery to the motorway. The well-spoken student who studied in Exeter University said it was up to everyday people to fix British politics. A Just Stop Oil spokesman said, "This is not a one-day event. Expect us every day and anywhere." So that's more threats. That's why their apologies are utterly meaningless. At this point, it doesn't matter if they apologize or not because they threaten to continue doing it anyway. That's a bit like if you have a shoplifter that goes into a shop, steals something, gets caught, and then says, "Oh, sorry, I done it," and then they just go back and do it. So their apologies are meaningless. In a related report, I'll just show you this directly. This is the POS behind a lot of this. Roger Hallam. I had an opportunity to confront this guy directly. I've mentioned this a few times. A couple of years ago, he was speaking in Sunderland at the Minster, which is a church I used to go to, and at the time I mulled on it. I thought, well, he's just there. I can go. I could go in and listen to him. But quite honestly, at the time, I knew what they were doing. I knew what at that time was Extinction Rebellion, and quite honestly, I didn't trust myself to keep my cool. I just didn't trust myself. I thought, well, I don't want to make a scene in the church. I don't want to, you know, blow my top and just get, just berate him. So I didn't. I sometimes regret that. I sometimes wish I had confronted him. And the damage they have done since is just profound. Anyway, he's now under arrest. It says the leader of the Just Stop Oil movement was held in custody last night. This is by Mary O'Connor after being arrested over an alleged plot to bring mayhem to the M25. Now, Roger Hallam is one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion. This proves that all these groups are interlinked because it's Just Stop Oil. Former Organic former Roger Hallam, 56, appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court yesterday after a police raid on Sunday. Hallam and seven others, including Reverend Tim Hughes, 72, were charged with conspiracy to cause a public nuisance. Hallam did not enter a plea. I think the church should defrock any clergy involved in this. It's a very unchristian thing to do, to mess with people's lives. Prosecutor Tom Hislop told the court on 2nd of November there was a Zoom meeting between members of Just Stop Oil planning and blocking the M25. Among the many things that can happen, I think Ian Duncan Smith's proposal is good because I think financial burdens will definitely hit them hard. They'll be legally obliged to pay that. But I think, someone out there must have some knowledge about hacking or something. Not that I wouldn't trust Anonymous to do it, because for all we know, they could agree with Just Stop Oil. But I'd love to see their website get hacked. I'd love to see them really face significant inconvenience. Just the amount of misery and stress that they're causing the public, I'd like to see some of it thrown back at them. Group members were heard saying if there was anyone at the meeting not prepared to commit, they should leave, the court was told. By the way, before I continue, I thought about the novelty of sort of going undercover, joining up with them just to try and find out, try and expose them or something. Unfortunately, I couldn't because, well, I've made these videos and I've been quite outspoken on their Facebook page, so my cover would be blown. It's a nice idea though to just pretend to join them and then sort of expose them from the inside out, or not expose them, they already expose themselves, but just something, I don't know. There has to be pushback. Just Stop Oil has been staging nationwide protests in a bid to pressure the government to drop all new oil and gas licenses. Hallam was remanded in custody and his case was sent to be dealt with by Southwark Crown Court on December the 6th. The suspected protest mastermind was supported at court yesterday by his 24-year-old German lover, Frieda Lurken, said to be the same age as his eldest daughter. Hallam and Miss Lurken reportedly met when she was studying psychology at Cardiff University before moving in together in London. Before his arrest, he was pictured holding hands with Miss Lurken on a walk in Walworth, South London, close to the Love Nest, which is said to cost £3,000 a month in rent. Wouldn't it be wonderful to know where they live and get a big mob outside the house? Give them a bit of heat for a change. And no, that's not a threat. I'm not calling on people to do that. I just think it would be poetic justice. Hallam is said to have lived with Miss Lurkin when he studied disruptive campaigns at King's College London. He is reported to have helped him organise the coming revolution from the upmarket flat, according to the Sun newspaper. The pair are said to have founded the Extinction Rebellion. I know they're pretty active in Germany as well. I think it seems to be Britain and Germany seems to be the two countries where I haven't heard of them in other countries. Together before creating Insulate Britain as a lockdown love child and later branching out to help run Just Stop Oil. He and Miss Lurkin have moved property several times in recent years, whether that's a security thing because he doesn't want people to know where he lives. Right? He's fine with causing misery to ordinary people, but he doesn't want any inconveniences. With Hallam getting by with monthly donations from supporters, so that's another reason to cut them off financially. Hallam recently wrote online, myself and my partner Frida are now in permanent rented flat. It has a spare room in which to organise the coming revolution. It is perfect, but I need money to afford it. Miss Lurkin describes her profession on LinkedIn as a movement accelerator coordinator for the International Planned Parenthood Federation Pressure Group. So, they cross over into other areas of politics. Greta Thunberg recently was talking about, taking on the capitalist and racist and imperialist West. The thing about eco extremists is they really do cross over into a far left worldview. But I think that, really Roger Hallam reminds me of like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. So far he hasn't planted bombs, but he's that sort of aura about him, that sort of he's almost like a cult leader. Not even almost, I would say he is. Because I do think they're pretty much a cult. If you actually look at some of they actually have like Venetian masks and stuff, at least Rebellion did. Um, what concerns me is the hardcore activists, they probably go into the hundreds. What concerns me is the apologists, people who are, there's a lot more of them, they would probably be in their thousands. Some of them are high profile. James O'Brien of LBC. Emily Mitlis, unfortunately, she's come out in defence of them. Now, I always had respect for Emily Maitlis. I always thought she was a good journalist, a professional journalist. She's come out and said that, compared them to the suffragettes, which is just, like I mentioned before, it's a big distortion because there's no evidence that the militant suffragette activity is what directly led to votes for women. But regardless, Emily Maitlis isn't going to be inconvenienced. She's a millionaire top broadcaster. She's not going to deal with the sort of pressures that ordinary people are facing. Same with Gary Lineker, another apologist. Um, if these celebrities who come out in defense of them actually went through what ordinary people are going through as a direct result of their actions, I mean, what I find abhorrent is what that man in Hillsbury went through. What must have been a very sad occasion to begin with. His father's funeral. I put myself in his shoes. I think my parents aren't in the best health. They're in their late 60s now. If something happened to them, I don't drive, but if I did, something happened to them and I was trying to get to the funeral. I mean, they live in Scotland, I live in Northeast England. And I was held up. Honestly, I don't think I could keep my cool. I think I would lash out. And it is so heartless and so callous and so sociopathic what they do. And the fact that they threaten to continue doing this, they're absolute thugs. People are under this delusion that because they're not planting bombs and throwing punches, they're peaceful. They're not peaceful. They're absolutely not peaceful. Any group that is boasting of hurting the public, of hurting other people, hurting strangers, that's not peaceful. It's messing with people's lives. And I hate them, quite honestly. I hate Just Stop Oil because I believe in civic responsibility, because I have empathy for those who they are hurting. And I put myself in their shoes. I mean, I'm not even directly affected by them. I haven't been. So, they make me very angry, but I can imagine how angry I would be if I was. I think actually a lot of those people held up by them have shown remarkable patience. But that idea IDS has on the spot fines, of course, they're not going to get out money and pay it. But really, really put pressure on them. I think at the moment they see injunctions and arrests as a badge of honor because they think that they're revolutionaries. Fines doesn't give them that sense of martyrdom in the same way, and it might actually be more effective. So I think maybe IDS is on something with that. I don't think it should be. I think every method should be used. They need to be broken. They need to be absolutely um, brought down because what they are doing, they're not going to stop. At what point are they going to, start getting into terrorist sabotage? Really, I'm genuinely concerned that this is going to happen. There was a Daily Telegraph report the other day saying that there's now significant concern that they're radicalizing young people. If you look at some of those recent protests on the M25, a lot of them were very young, in their early 20s, and they were absolutely hysterical. There was one woman, 25, I think I mentioned it before. She was crying her eyes out and saying it's for her future. And then, it was between tears and anger. I mean, these are radicalized young people. No different than if they were brought into a far right group or an Islamist group. I really don't think it's any different. Just because the cause is different doesn't mean the danger is any different. I mean, where is this all heading? It's been 3 years now and they're just getting worse. Because what they've been doing recently is a lot worse than what Extinction Rebellion was doing in 2019. So I honestly wonder, where is this heading? It's quite, I'm quite concerned about it. I'd like to see Hallam prescribed as a terrorist. I really think this man is dangerous. I think he's a cult leader. But I do think that they're exploiting vulnerable people. Um, what do the protesters tend to be made up of? They tend to be middle class students. They tend to be retirees. I think it's a misconception that they're all unemployed. I think a lot of them are in otherwise mainstream professions, but they're radicalized. And that man who couldn't get to his father's funeral, I've such sympathy for him. I mean, that's just disgusting what they done to him. It shows what cards they are in the sense that they won't take any responsibility for their actions. I mean, you could argue that they're prepared to be hated and they're prepared to do dangerous stunts. And I suppose that's sort of brave stupidity. But they're cowardly insofar as they won't correspond with the police and they won't correspond with the public. They won't talk to the public. They won't talk to the police. Now, does that not tell you everything you need to know? The fact that they will not engage with the people that they're hurting. They're not trying to get people on board. They're utterly contemptible. And how long is this country going to put up with them? How long are we going to allow a small minority of extremists to hold us to ransom? It kind of disgusts me, actually. And it's not an asset to democracy. I think they're a threat to democracy.